Hello CompuMove friends, welcome to another CompuMove training video. What we have for you today is a look at CompuMove's job invoicing function. First, we'll take a look at turning job charges into revenue. We'll look at charges, basis, and revenue on the job screen. And we'll do that for a simple local move under our own authority. And also we'll take a look at doing that with carrier agent shares for agency work. Then we'll look at how that posted revenue is presented in the various places in the program. In the job journals, in accounts receivable, in posted revenue. Then we'll look at how to generate an invoice. For a simple local invoice under our own authority, then we'll do a carrier agent invoice where we're getting paid shares, and then we'll do a selected item invoice for a subset or supplemental charge items. Finally, we'll look at how those invoices can be seen in the system. We'll look at the job billing tab, we'll look at the open receivables report, and we'll look into move books and see those in the invoice register. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. So before we can think about actually generating an invoice, we have to have some revenue posted. And so I've got two examples in front of us here. I've got a local move where we're doing it under our own authority. And so we're going to be getting 100% of all the charges. And then I've also got an interstate move where we're getting shares. We're not billing for the entire job. We're only billing for the portions of the job that our company did. And in that case, we're only going to take pieces of line items and invoice for them. So first, let's take a look at this local move. If you take a look at the posted distributions area, you can see here the revenue column. This is where the money that matters and that's going to appear on the invoice needs to land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the service description area. I've already got an hour of travel time in there. I'm going to go ahead and say 8 hours for a van and 2 men. And you can see that by default, the share column is blank. And so nothing is coming through to revenue. So let's fix that so we can generate an invoice. So I'm going to hit the share button, and I'm just going to choose the 100% button. Now I could put 100s manually in the column here, and that would accomplish the same thing. But I used the share button and chose 100% just as a shortcut. So now we've got money in the revenue column. And as you can see down here in the financial summary, it shows that we've got company revenue and that it's receivable. So let's take a look at what happens when we go to save that. I'm going to go ahead and sit on the journal screen. It's not necessary that I do so, but I want to see this activity take place. So I'm sitting on the journal screen, then I'm going to go File, and I'm going to say Save No Exit. This will post whether I exit or not when I do the save, but I want to stay here and watch it. So I'm going to choose Save No Exit. Then when I do that, I get 2 journal entries with general ledger codes, and they are date and time stamped for when this transaction took place. So if I go back to the charge screen, you can see that those values that are in the history are in the revenue area, and so now we can invoice for them. In the very same way, but with a little more complication, I've on this interstate job gone ahead and done some splits. So here we've got discounted line haul. We're saying in the case of this example that there's a 2% van line retention taking place. And so we're getting paid booking at 15% and hauling at 72%. And then down here under the full pack, this is a weight-based full pack for an interstate move. We're getting paid at 75%. And then so here is our company revenue. You can see that's only a portion of the overall shipment charges, and that's the point of this, that when we generate invoices, we're generating them off of our company revenue column. Now, when we do a move under our own authority, we don't show that split taking place. That would just be confusing to a local move shipper. But when we do that for carrier work or for interline agency work, it's very important to show those splits so that the party who's receiving our invoice can understand what we're invoicing for. So now we've got those charges entered in the job, and we're ready to take the next step, which is before we invoice, we're going to have a look at how that revenue is going to show in various places in the system. Now that we've entered revenue on these jobs, let's take a look at how it's presented in the various places in the system. We've already looked at the job journal where we can see this activity posting. Now, if we make an adjustment, the change will be journalized, but of course the grand net total will appear in the general ledger. So in this case, we have not made any adjustments, so we're just standing on what we've got here. So the other place that this appears is on the open receivable report. So if I run an open receivables report and display it, I've only got 2 jobs in the system right now. You can see them both listed here. One's in the local move category with its aging. One's in the interstate move category with its aging. In particular, you can see that neither of these jobs has got a value in this invoice number column. We got an empty space there, an empty space there. We'll revisit this again when we're done, and we'll see that those values have been populated. The other place that something shows up, because we've got values entered in the charge area, if we go to the charge screen, we've got something in revenue. Now we can print an income statement. So I'm going to go back to the report system. I'm going to go to the income statement. I'm going to display it. Again, we have very little data to work with because we started out with a zeroed out system, but here we've got revenue in our various categories. We've got some local hauling, we've got some interstate hauling, we've got that packing and that booking commission that came out of the interstate job. So these values are reflecting what was entered on the individual job detail. So we've seen that those values have been committed to the general ledger. We've got a receivable, we've got revenue. So now it's time to generate those invoices. So now that we've got revenue posted to these jobs and we've taken a look at how that appears in the system on the open receivables report and on the income statement based on the revenue distribution, let's take a look at actually generating an invoice. Now, one thing that's important with generating an invoice is who's getting billed. So here on the billing tab for this local move, I've just manually entered a shipper name and address. Let's go ahead and fix that one. And so that's who it's going to bill to. This is not an account move. On the other hand, on this interstate move, I've picked somebody from my pull-down customer list, in this case the Jones Corporation, and so it's auto-populated the billing information. The other angle on that, since it's an account move, is it'll keep track of all the moves collectively for this account. So if there's a credit limit that's been applied, it'll alert me if I'm approaching that. I can look at the customer history and see what's going on there. So in this case, I'm not interested in that. I just wanted to make sure I had a bill to name and address here, just like I do here. So that's been taken care of for the individual shipper, for the local move, and for the account for the interstate move. So let's go ahead and generate that invoice. So I'll sit on the charge screen. I'm going to go to the print menu and I'm going to pick invoice. And then in this case, I'll just display it. You can open up your local PDF application if you want to look at it that way. You can send it directly to a printer. You can send it directly to email. In this case, I want to have a look at it, so I'm going to click the display button, and it goes ahead and generates that. And now I've got an invoice for this simple local move. You can see it's got the bill to information. It's got some shipment information. If we had origin, destination, addresses, and service dates, they'd be in there. I don't have that in this particular example job. So what I've got is the service description, the rate, the charge, the balance due, and then this return receipt down here. So all of our invoices are designed to be mailed out in a number 10 window envelope. So that's how that's going to align. And then the return receipts are designed to fit inside a number 9 window envelope. So you can, if you choose, actually include one envelope inside the other to make returns easier. So there's my invoice for my local move. Now let's take a look at that invoice for that interstate move, because in that case I'm picking what I call an agent invoice. And I'll do exactly the same thing as I did with the local invoice, except you can see here the presentation is different because it shows the shares. Here, everything's at my own authority. I don't even show the shares, but because here I'm invoicing as an agent for a carrier, I've grown these additional columns. I also, because this shipment is discounted, it shows the discount percentage, the discounted charge, the agent share, and the agent revenue. So ultimately, in the end, I'm billing for my portion of the agent revenue, which is just a subset of all the charges. And I'm showing how I got there by showing the discount percentage, by showing the agent share, agent split, which of course is just not appropriate for that local move. It would confuse a local shipper or a local account, or perhaps an office move account or something like that if I presented it that way. So really a couple different formats for the invoice in terms of the columns that show, but otherwise basically the same. Now the final thing I might want to do with an invoice is to generate a selected item invoice. So suppose I had gone ahead and invoiced somebody for a local move, and then they had us come out and do an extra stop for a debris pickup. You can see I've got a price here for that. Now I don't want to re-invoice them for the whole shipment. I only want to do a supplemental invoice for that line item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this box. That's the selected item box for the purposes of invoicing. If I hit that select button, it'll toggle them on or all off, so I can use that to clear. In this case, I've got the one item that I want to invoice selected like that, so I'm going to go ahead and pick that from the menu. So I pick a different form choice. Instead of doing invoice, I'm going to do invoice select, and then I'm going to display it, and it's going to show that to me, and now I'm only invoicing for that one line. Now those charges are all together on this job, so if I receive partial payment, I'll apply it. If they pay me in full for the whole thing, I'll apply that, and that'll be great. But in this case, I'm invoicing just specifically for that line item. So that can be helpful if you have something like a shipment goes into storage in transit, into SIT, and maybe you want to invoice for the first day, or if you've got something that's being done in phases for some kind of project work, and you want to be able to generate those invoices as you go, then that will make it possible. The final thing for us to do is take a look at how these invoices are going to be seen in the system. We've generated a job document, so if we go to the document screen and click on it, we can see that document. From here we can print it, we can save it with our local PDF app, we can email it out. The other place that it shows, though, is on the billing tab. If I go to the billing tab of the job down here, you can see there are the job invoice numbers listed. So this invoice really exists twice. It exists as a registered invoice number in the system, and then it also exists as a document that's attached to the job that is the invoice PDF document itself. So it's really appearing both places. If I go to the billing tab and double click on it, it's going to open up the document. Or I can do that, it'll be in with all the other documents, bill, lading, dispatch ticket, whatever they might be on the individual history of the job document. So it really gets covered both places. The other place that it shows is on the Open Receivables Report. So if I go back to Reports and I go to Open Receivables Report and I display that, then I get another copy of the Open Receivables Report that I had before, but now the invoice number field is populated. You can see there's that number there, there's that number there. And so when I go to apply payment, I can search for the job based on that invoice number. But the other thing, of course, is I can run an Open Receivables Report and I can choose the option for whether jobs have been invoiced. So if I want to take a look at jobs that have a receivable balance on them but have not been invoiced, I'll be able to do that. I can also control how I do my aging. So if I take a look at my aging option, if I put it on revenue date, then that would be aged according to when the services were performed. If I leave it on invoice date, which is the default option, then that's going to age the receivable based on when the invoice went out, not when we did the work. Of course, that's not really quite the same thing. So the final place that we're going to look here is we're going to go into Move Books and we're going to look at the invoice register. So if I go to Move Books and I go to Invoices, now I see I've got 3 open invoices on my system. Obviously there's a variety of options up at the top for what's being included. how the date range goes. If I've got a divisional structure, I could choose accordingly. But in this case, I'm doing pretty much the simple thing. So I've got 3 jobs right here that are in open invoice status. Then as those jobs get paid, they'll convert and those invoices will drop off of the open list. So the very last thing to look at is what happens to the job status when we generate an invoice. So if I've gone into job and schedule status to setup, you can see I've got a status title called invoiced, and the trigger there is invoiced, which means the act of printing the invoice puts it in that status. There's also another status for paid in full. So once this job gets paid, it'll switch out of invoice status and into paid in full. That's a subject for another video. But in this case, you can see the trigger is invoiced, and so that status is invoiced. So when I go back to this interstate job record and have a look at it, now that I've generated that invoice, it's gone into that status. So there's a variety of ways that that's represented in the system. I can run a status report. I'll see it anywhere I look because that status shows on many of the reports and many of the views, and so it will enable me to filter accordingly. So I think that's enough for now. That's a pretty comprehensive look at CompuMove's job invoicing function. There is a function to do consolidated invoices where multiple jobs are rolled together. So that would be appropriate for something like a project work, maybe a hotel refit or something. We have customers doing substantial amounts of that. But that's a subject of another video. So please be on the lookout for that. That goes into quite a bit of detail there. But I think this is it for now for doing invoices for individual jobs. As always, if you've got any questions, please reach out to us. We're very happy to help. And thanks for watching.